Hello, 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 and welcome to another live stream here on YouTube. As always, let me know in the chat if you can hear and see me just fine. I sure hope so. I'm making things happen differently today. I've got a lot of different buttons happening. You saw the new map, hopefully, if you're watching live as well. And what else? We got multiple live streams coming in. We're live streaming to my channel and to Zephan's channel, who we'll get to in a second. What else? We are running the pre and post show over on Zoom. So if you want to join that, we were hanging out there for about 30 minutes or so, chit-chatting about all this fun stuff and making sure everything works as we expect it to. And we will continue to chat on the other side of the show for the next 30 minutes. But we will be here and chatting with my special guest today. And let me just see if I have all the buttons in place to bring up Zephan. Are you there? Can you hear me just fine? I hope so.
I hear you just fine, loud and clear.
Excellent. And I was a true professional this week, and I put on my headphones before we started the show so I could actually hear you as well. Last week, I had Lucas on the show, and as he started talking, I realized I couldn't hear him. But today, I'm a true pro. Um, so we're going to talk for the next 30 minutes or so, and anyone can throw in some questions in the chat. I'll keep an eye on my YouTube chat as much as possible. Zephan, you can keep an eye on yours as well. So feel free to jump in and say if there's any questions coming in from there. And yeah, in general, we're just going to talk about live streaming, the business of live streaming, and that kind of fun stuff. But I thought you could kick us off by telling us a little bit about you, what you do, what your channel is all about, so people know who you are if they're joining and watching you for the first time here on my channel.
Sure thing. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on both your channel and taking the responsibility of sending it to my channel as well, because that takes some of the tech hassle off my plate. So thank you. Hey everyone, my name is Zephan, and I'm located in Baltimore, Maryland, in USA. And I started live streaming probably 7 or 8 years ago through a colleague of mine who was bringing me on as a camera operator and to help out with some events he was doing. And as time went on, I started to learn how to use the TriCaster, and then the A10 minis came out, and things just kind of progressed from there. When COVID hit, there was definitely a need for live streaming, and so that kept us very, very busy. I feel like our work was shut down for all of a week, and then right away we were back at it in the hospitals, in the universities, helping them out with streaming. And that's kind of brought me to present day. And so throughout the last kind of 2 years or so, my side project has been teaching things on YouTube, creating my channel, and it's Zephan Moses live streamer on YouTube.
Very nice. And that's where I found you. Actually, I think this video, your extreme, let me see if I have it here. I'm sure I opened it up because I opened it in advance so I didn't have to watch the adverts while we were while we were sitting here. Yeah, this video that you made all about your custom. Oh, I wanted to hold it right on that frame there because it looked really nice. The custom rack case you made is the one that introduced me to you. So is this still something you're still using here, and how's that project coming on?
Yeah, so this build was probably my first, what I would call legitimate rack case build. I had a rack case build before that where I had built in a Mac Mini, and it was kind of made for this and what we're doing on our back end here. It was for bringing in a Zoom guest, pinning them to a second display, taking that out into an A10 Mini, and using that while we are on the road and needing to bring in a virtual guest. But once the extremes came out, I said, you know what, this would be great if I could rack mount this and build a whole setup where I just bring one case and it has, most of what I need inside of it. I am sorry to say it does not exist in that form anymore. But
Oh,
for one big key reason, well, really two reasons. The first is that rack case had the A10 Mini Extreme in it long before the SDI model came out. And I've since bought a couple of the SDI models. But two, the A10 Constellation came out, the 2ME, and I bought one of those. And then, of course, along with it, you buy all the bells and whistles. So I got the advanced control panel. And next thing you know, it doesn't all fit into a small rack case like that anymore.
yeah.
Um, so that rack case has been modified slightly. It also, instead of having the pull-out monitor, that there was a 17-inch pull-out monitor, it just has dual monitors, little, I think 7-inch monitors in it now. Um, Reason being that allows me to see both ME1 and ME2 on the Constellation. And I can also kind of use it as a second monitor for someone who might be operating my PTZ cameras.
Mm.
So they can see my multi-view on one side, and then the second multi-view, I could put my PTZ cameras. And so if they need to see that while they're operating it, it's just a little kind of cheat sheet monitor for them to look at so they can modify where the cameras are placed.
That's what I'm finding with my own videos posted. Well, well, the ones that are posted years ago, it's certainly true of, but the ones that are posted a few months ago, even this stuff changes so fast that even if people are giving you feedback, I have a video on YouTube that's like 6 years old, and people give me feedback on that, like maybe you should have moved this thing over here or that,
Right.
and they don't know that within maybe 2 weeks of making that video, I had
It's
torn it all
already,
apart. Yeah, exactly. And that actually,
yeah.
I don't know if you find this time and time again, but whenever I used to do a lot of touring around with equipment like this, I was sure every single time that I had it right, that it was totally worth building into this case, a little bit like yours there. And then every single time I brought it with me on a job, it would come back and get torn apart or rebuilt every single time. And eventually I just decided to stop doing that again and bring things piece by piece again. And then I started doing the other thing again. Are you finding something similar?
It was definitely that for some time, I think, until I got to the Constellation. And I think that made things a little bit easier because I finally had enough inputs and outputs for everything. And I kind of landed on this hybrid case that works both as, the case for my Constellation for the 2ME, but also this case has the PoE switch. So all of my PTZ cameras are powered off of it, and the controller plugs right into that switch on the back of it. So it's kind of a dual purpose there. And finally, I've settled on this thing that seems to have worked for the last maybe I don't remember when the 2ME came out. So at least the last 6 to 9 months, give or take. And that's probably the last time that I rebuilt it. But yeah, there was a lot of trial and error with the
Mm.
original extreme models of the A10s to get everything right. And um, I think the one problem that I found with a rack case with this model of ATEM, where you have a whole panel of keys to keep your hands on throughout the show, is that it doesn't really matter where you put the rack case.
Mm.
It's always going to be elevated above the table height. And so your wrists are going to be like this. And I can tell you, 10 minutes into a show, it hurts pretty bad to be doing that.
It
So
does. That's what I
that
find.
that was yeah, that was the big issue. And, I wish there was a shelf that could slide out at table level,
Mm.
but because of how the rack case kind of has a lip on the bottom and it's not perfectly flush with a table, it just didn't quite work out for me.
No, that's what I found time and time again with all of those people making videos about building an A10 Mini into a like a Pelly style case or one of those kind of cases. And I always thought if you use that for 5 minutes, you're going to be in extreme pain with this weird
Yeah.
angle. It's so much better if you could get it right against the table. It'd be really great, but it's not quite so feasible. Here's one though. Ivor says, "I built my A10 Mini Extreme rack based on your design. Very happy with it. Consider changing to an SDI workflow in the future." See, change is already happening, but it looks like you helped someone to make things happen. So that's pretty cool. Thanks for
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think the idea is solid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being able to have one case where you can bring everything with, well, not everything, right? Your cameras and tripods aren't fitting into this case, but, one case instead of having a Pelican case with all this cable mess, it saves you a lot of trouble. So I think there's a lot of value in it. It really just depends on how you use it. So some people might be bringing, I've seen those SKB cases where the top lid comes off and the ATEM can sit up top. I know that
Mm-hmm.
David Ford does that, and it just kind of has a hole for the cables to drop through. But that's the type of case where you have to be standing to operate it. So
Yeah,
it's at proper wrist height, but you have to stand over it. And then it's not as easy to look down inside the case. And if you need to do anything with your hyperdeck or anything else that's mounted in there, it's not as easy to get to.
that's true. But I do find a lot of people who build the cases end up making it like a brains box that sits over there, and then a couple of stream decks are extended from that, and that becomes the control surface, which is probably one of the best solutions, especially like you said there with that one. I've saw David Joshua Ford has it too, and I wouldn't want to stand at that, but I think that he does a lot of stream deck control of it, which works out really nicely.
Yeah, he's usually got two stream decks. I was actually fortunate enough to work with him on a live stream. He said he was
Oh
coming down my
yeah,
way and wanted me to come out and work with him for a day, and that was fun. So I got to see his setup and just kind of see how somebody does things a little bit differently.
that's really cool. Yeah, that's it's fun to see. I saw that photo, I think, on Discord or maybe on something else, but it was fun to see two people that you know working together. It's always cool.
Yeah, we got to meet in real life instead of being internet friends.
Yeah, someday maybe we will too.
Right, there you go.
And speaking of setups, what is the setup you're using right now? Is this your
Yeah,
sort of semi-fixed setup? What's going on?
yeah. So I think we were talking a little bit before we jumped on the live stream about how one of the problems with my setup was that I would come into the studio and every time I have to reset the entire room from whatever was happening prior. Um, I really wanted a space where I could walk in and just hit a few buttons and go. So this setup, I'm actually using the Elgato Keylight Airs as my key and fill. I've got a couple of those cheaper, like Photo Diox, the little circular LED light panels on the ceiling,
Hmm.
and they're remote controlled. So I have outlets that they're plugged into. And this remote control, if I press the button, you'll see it'll start to turn them off. And
Oh
I can
yeah,
control all of that just from the press of a button right here, which is really, really convenient. Um, and then the camera I'm using is a Sony ZV-E10. I've got a little, I think it's a DesView teleprompter on it and a little 5-inch Field World monitor so I can look directly at you as I'm speaking instead of, kind of looking off to the side here.
right.
Um, Everything's running through an 810 Mini Extreme ISO with just a little monitor. I love these little 13-inch monitors from Arzopa. They're like paper thin on Amazon for maybe 150 bucks and just super easy to travel with. And then I have a Mac Mini off to the side, and that's where I'm just kind of watching the YouTube live stream and everything else going on over here. And that's also where I'm in the Zoom call that you're using
Mhm.
to bring me into the live stream.
Exactly, and we're just sort of screen scraping you off of the Zoom call and bringing you into the live stream. Works really nicely for one guest and for letting the members hang out in the pre and post show and use it for the show. We have a question popped in here from OT or OTT maybe. Do you think it's worth getting the ATEM Television Studio Pro, the panel version, this year, or should I just use a Stream Deck with an ATEM Mini Extreme rack to avoid the wrist pain? What do you think, Zephan?
So I'm a huge fan of the advanced control panel that I got to go with the 2ME. So I really do like that setup. I think it depends on have they updated them yet to have built-in scalers? I think the 4K one does
Just the
have
4K
scalers
one
built
has
in.
scalers, yeah, but the rest are no.
Yeah, so not that that's super important, right? Like if you put all of your cameras on the same frame rate and resolution, then it doesn't really matter. It might not be an issue for you.
Hmm.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with getting that, saving a little bit of money if it works for your setup and your needs. Um, I'm somebody that's always kind of going for not the best of the best, but I like the ability of, ISO recordings. That's why all my extremes are the ISO models. So I like going for the additional features now to try to future proof a little bit. And then that also allows me in the future, if I do trade in, maybe the model that I'm selling to trade in for that is worth just a little bit more money that I can put towards the newer model. So I think it's really all based around your setup and what you're doing, but I think it is a very comfortable setup to be using that style of panel for sure.
I think you're right, and I think I have played with that one a little bit, the Pro one, um, a little bit, and it is a really nice form factor, and the advanced panel is a really nice form factor too. Of course, it's made to work and sit at a desk and use it all the time, so is really nice and much better buttons. Well, maybe that's better, maybe not the right word, but um, you get used to those big clicky buttons and you really like them versus the mushy Stream Deck buttons. So if you go down that path, it's very hard to go back away from it. I don't know though if I would get a device like that that's aged this much. I would definitely want to make sure it is the scalar version and the version with all the advanced audio controls as well, which are really nice
Hmm.
to have. Um, yeah, like you said, like the scalers is not maybe not a huge issue. We got on just fine before without all the scalers everywhere, but there were a few times it tripped you up. And once you get into the ATEM mini world, and all this time has passed, I have taken out my old television studio for the rare occasion and then been bitten, wondering why is this not working? What is going on here?
Yeah.
And 20 minutes later, I'm trying to find my decimeter so I can make things work. Uh,
And that's, you bring up a good point there. You know, decimators have been really hard to get recently.
mm,
They're in short supply. So if you're one of the lucky few that has an alert set up on eBay so that the second somebody sells one, you can go get one. But that's also another reason just to have it built into the ATEM so that you don't have to worry about scaling and it's all good to go. Um, if you don't already have, like me, 6 or 7 decimators just sitting around. So it's nice to have. Hey, John, I had a couple people
hmm
jump in on the comments on mine as well.
Yeah.
Martin asked me about, so I've been using the Canon CRN 300 PTZ cameras, and Martin said, are they great for the type of events that you live stream? Um, my answer is definitely yes. I like that the wide DR profile tends to match. I like using both the Canon cinema cameras, so the C70, the C200, but also I'll bring in the Canon XA55, which now has been, I think, re-released as the XA75, but it's really not that different anymore. But that color profile matches very well.
Mm.
I like to put them up either on C stands or taller tripods, and they just give me a better vantage point over the crowd as we're going through the live stream. So if things move around or people stand up, I don't have to worry about their heads blocking a shot. Um, the 300s will start to run into trouble in low light settings, so they're nice to a certain point, and then the 500s are definitely going to do you more favors on that one. So I like them a lot. They're actually coming out with me in 2 days. We're going to be live streaming a congressional swearing in of new congressmen and congresswomen. So they're coming with me for that, and we'll be doing a live stream in Washington D.C. So they're a great tool to have on hand. I think for the price, they're pretty darn solid. Um, I got custom cables made to go with them that
Nice.
pairs Cat 6 and SDI in the same cable, which are kind of tough to find, but I found them on eBay. And I will say that saves me a lot of trouble on the cable runs. So I think they're great cameras if you're already shooting Canon or want to match Canon cameras. And just PTZ cameras in general are super helpful. Um, I usually won't use it for the close-up shot though, if I don't have to.
Yeah, PTZs are just so good to have. I've been using them a lot recently for other people. I don't tend to use much of my own equipment much anymore on freelance jobs. So I just I'm a person to be there and press the buttons and move the joystick. But since all of those people have bought PTZs, it's perfect for me because it is quite the investment up front, especially if you're looking at some of these Canon CR3 N300s or anything in the 4K range these days, and you probably want to buy at least 3 of them to get your whole kit going. So it is quite the upfront investment if you haven't bought any just yet. So I certainly haven't, but having full control of 3 or more cameras from one place, it's really nice to have. What what makes you think that, or why would you opt for someone who's maybe just going to buy a new set of PTZ cameras? Is there anything that would push you towards, that should push them towards the Canon world? Any advice for them about where to go if they don't have any cameras right now they want to match either?
Yeah, I've always been a fan of the Canon color science, and of course, all the Canon fanboys will scream about that, and we can fight all day with the Sony people. But I already had Canon, so it made sense that if I was going to go into the PTZ world, that I was going to get them. Um, so I would say I've also seen the cameras from PTZ Optics, and the picture kind of falls flat a little bit. I feel like it
Mm.
doesn't show as much depth in the image. The colors are a little bit more muted. It reminds me more of security camera footage, which is where they're derived from. But um, I think in due time, as bigger sensors go in these cameras, we just saw Sony launched one with interchangeable lenses, and I think that's going to start
Oh
changing the
yeah.
game. Once you get into PTZ cameras with lenses you can change out that are able to go down to f 1.4 or 1.8 and zoom in at a range of 200 to 300 millimeters, and keep that same f-stop all the way through, you're going to start to see a big change in the game. And just combining that with some of the facial tracking stuff that's coming out, where it could actually track somebody across the stage. I think you're going to get to a point where these cameras could easily get rid of a few camera operators, and then you can kind of pocket a little bit more money in your business.
Yeah, it all adds up, doesn't it? Um, yeah, those Sony ones were really cool to see at IBC. I had some fun playing with them a little bit. I don't think I'm ready to make the investment in those either, but they weren't. What I found strange about them was, or good about them, I suppose, was once you're all in on buying several PTZs, it wasn't, for me, I didn't think a huge step to head in the direction of those, and give it a year or two more, and other people will come out with similar interchangeable lens PTZs,
Hmm.
and the price will probably change a bit too. Niels here saying the mic sounds a little muffled, and I'm guessing that's on your end, Zephan. We did talk about audio. This I only brought it up just because we
Yeah.
did some testing in the pre-show. Is there anything you're trying to correct for on your end?
Yeah, so thanks for calling that out. So one of the downsides to being in a small studio space is having to control sound a little bit. And so I've got everything going against me. The roof is kind of thin. You can hear airplanes when they go overhead. There's a train that comes through maybe once a day. But right now, just for the purposes of this show, I have a Feel World monitor that's kind of in a teleprompter, so I can look directly at John instead of, kind of sitting here looking at the computer the whole time. And that monitor, unfortunately, has a very noisy fan. I actually contacted Feel World about it, and they said, "We're sorry, there's no firmware updates. We haven't released anything yet to adjust this." There is a setting in the menu for the fan that is grayed out, so I can't even do anything
Oh
about it.
no.
But I was trying to kill off just some of the hum of the fan coming through there. The heat is on in my place. So right now outside it's 37 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just above freezing. So my office was pretty cold when I came in the morning, and I just wanted to try to kill off some of that ooh noise
Mm.
that might be coming through.
Yeah, that's fine. I, I I only bring it up so that we can chat about one of those things that always pops up when you're doing shows is
Yep.
nothing's ever going to be exactly the way you want it to be. So what are all the workarounds that we need to make things work just fine?
Yep.
We have questions. Tuxman20, solid name there, saying, do you feel that streaming events is something that would best require formal technical studies, or is it better learned through experience, i.e., sound, picture, cabling, etc.? What do you think, Stefan?
I think that's a great question. So I went to college for digital video and cinema studies was my major. And I will say that while they had a fantastic studio and, a great setup, they had invested probably a few $1 million in. Um, I learned on HDV cameras, and I graduated, and 2 weeks later got a job, and all of a sudden they hand me SD cards, and I'm like, what is this? So things things change very, very quickly. Um, so I think that, college or technical trainings can be useful to a certain extent, but they're probably going to be lagging behind the actual industry by anywhere from 3 to 5 years, if not more, depending on the program. And so for me, live streaming and learning the ins and outs really was finding local people in my area that were already doing it, going out with them on shoots, and starting to learn and master things from them, because that was the fastest way to learn how to troubleshoot things like cables, to learn how to
Mm.
troubleshoot things that could possibly go wrong that you're not going to find in a controlled setting. You're not going to find all of these wrenches that the clients throw in your plans right as you're getting ready to go live. You just won't get that experience in any sort of formal training. So I think it's important to really go out there and shadow the people that are out there doing it every single day.
I totally agree. I studied film in university, and at the same time, I was making some live events in my spare time, and I always feel like I learned a lot more from those than I did sitting in classrooms, and even the practical stuff we did there. It was very strangely structured instead of usefully structured, and learning from being out on jobs and stuff. There's nothing quite like it whenever you have an actual deadline and a show starts and you want to record that show And do you have all the equipment you need? There is a pressure that comes with that. And it's a little bit like planning a live stream at home versus going off and actually doing the live stream. Two totally different scenarios. And you learn a lot in the moment whenever the clock is ticking down and things are not working the way you want them to work. We
I think
Go on.
it allowed me to see different switchers too.
Mm.
The person that I was working with had a TriCaster, and didn't start with Blackmagic equipment. I was actually the one to kind of jump on the Blackmagic train, and then he jumped on after me. So it's going to allow you to see more than just what that technical training has available for you, so that you're not going out into the field and thinking, oh, I see a bunch of lit up buttons. They look
Mm.
familiar, but I have no idea how this works.
And I think that range of experience helps so you're not so locked into one system as well. I find that anyone who says hardware switchers are better probably used a lot of hardware switchers, and people who say software switching is so much more capable and better, they probably mostly use those. So if you can give a range of the two, maybe use like in this case the ATEMs for certain jobs, Roland mixers for certain jobs, you'll find that they actually work better in certain jobs than other switching
Mhm.
patterns and hardware and software and all that stuff. Just trying as much as you possibly can for other people is a really good way to get around, I think. More questions. Time is going fast here, so we're going to keep going through all of this good
Yeah,
stuff.
and I've got one that popped through too. So let me know when.
Oh,
Let's
well,
do one on your side, and then we'll
let's do
switch
that.
off.
Absolutely. Alvin here wants to know, what platforms do you prefer for live stream hosting? I am a fan of Vimeo for live stream, but it isn't cheap. That is for sure. I almost refuse to give Vimeo money now because it is so expensive, and they're so focused on live streaming, and it doesn't always work as well as I would like it to either. But for me personally, I end up using YouTube for most of my streams, or else the client has a account on something, or I'm working for another freelancer and they are already solving all of that stuff. So I opt for YouTube for most of what I do, but just purely because of how I'm doing things. Do you have a range of different tools that you grab?
So I have to agree on the Vimeo front. Not only is it expensive, but I have had numerous failures on the Vimeo side,
Mm-hmm.
that really are not comfortable when you're in the hot seat and the client already chose Vimeo or used it in the past and then it's not working. Um, I think easily four or so times in the past 12 months I've had issues with Vimeo. And a large portion of it has been on their end and nothing they can really do about it, from everything that we troubleshoot and try to determine on our side. We've had reliable internet connections where we have no problem streaming anywhere else. And for some reason, Vimeo's platform just has trouble with it. So, not a big fan of Vimeo. Of course, if it's the client comes in and says, this is what we've used in the past, we have an account, you're going to use it. I say, okay. I'll usually let them know that it's not my favorite and I have experienced problems, and that at least kind of sets me up in advance so that
Mm-hmm.
if something does happen,
Smart.
I don't want to go back to a client to say, see, I told you,
Yeah.
but at least it allows me a little bit of protection so that they're not looking at me and thinking that I did something wrong. I agree on the YouTube front because if it's a public facing live stream,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the easiest things to get to. People don't have to log in to watch. You can just send them a link. It's very easy to use. Um, we have used some private platforms. So we've used platforms like Hoova.
Mm-hmm.
We've used, I think is it Blue Jeans, Big Marker. They're a dime a dozen. There's a whole bunch of these
So many.
platforms. Hopin. So we've used a bunch of these. I don't have a favorite out of any of them only because they're paid platforms. And so it really just depends on the event. And I would say that a large majority of our events are open facing to the public and don't need to be locked down behind a paywall. So, and we've used ViewStub. ViewStub, we had a good experience with as well
Mm-hmm.
for a conference with four simultaneous breakouts as well as a main ballroom. So,
Nice. Oh, you've tried all the options then.
yeah, I think we're working our way through them. We kind of have our blacklist of ones that we won't use anymore, but
Mm-hmm.
and Vimeo is working its way down there.
It is. I want to see that ranking somewhere along the way.
Right. We have like a whiteboard on the wall, of like here's our blacklist that we won't
Exactly.
use anymore. It's along with our videographers and freelancers that we won't hire anymore.
Yeah, it's a long list. We can talk to that question on your chat now. Was that from Martin?
Yep, Martin asked, how do you find clients? So maybe John, I'll throw it over to you just to kind of get your perspective on this, and then I'm happy to add in my 2 cents.
Yeah, well, I'm going to actually throw it back to you very fast because these days I'm not
Okay.
looking for so many live streaming clients. I have a few people locally here that hire me, like I said, to push the buttons from day to day whenever they need a second or third person. But I'm doing a lot of software development from day to day now, so I'm not really actively hunting clients. When I used to, I did a lot of cold emailing for conferences and events to see if I could get responses. But I have been out of that little market for a while. So back to you because I want to hear what you're up to.
Okay. So I start from on the local side. I was a member of BNI Business Networking International, which is an international networking group that meets on a weekly basis. And essentially, the rule is there can be no one else in your industry in your chapter. So we're meeting for about an hour every single week to talk business, to pass referrals, and to build a bigger network of other local business owners that can become kind of a sales team for us or a referral team for us. And that was what really got me off the ground because I found a chapter where I had a web designer, an SEO guy, a promotional products person. We had a company that did done for you email newsletter writing. So, those combined with an IT firm, which is great when it comes to streaming, um, really became really good referral partners for me. So that was kind of the starting point. But one of the things that I did was I noticed that when I first kind of entered this professional world about 13 years ago now here in Baltimore in my area, everyone had this perspective of, oh, that person got work, so they're stealing an opportunity that could have been mine. It was this really
Right.
messed up culture here, which I think does kind of get replicated in many other cities and locations where everyone thinks, oh, just because they got this cool gig or this, big name client, they're stealing work from me. And I thought really long and hard about how to change that culture. And what we started to do was we got monthly meetups. And at the very beginning, it was 4 people sitting around a kitchen table talking shop. I can actually picture exactly where I was for our first one. So one of the guys volunteered to come in and like shoot headshot photos for everybody. One of them volunteered to go over his legal contract and show us what he has in his contract. And we would just kind of trade ideas. And I really didn't know what to expect out of this, but it very quickly grew to the point where we needed a studio space or something bigger. And I'll never forget. Maybe 6 months in, we had a studio and like 40 people there, and some people had driven from out of state just to be there. So there was a very real need and want for networking within our industry. And so that's where I was like, okay, I think we're on to something. There's always going to be, those people that we don't want to work with for one reason or another. But I think that if we build a more tight-knit community here, this can really benefit everybody. Because if this person gets sick and needs someone to cover, or that person needs a second shooter or whatever, we now have people to pull from. And so that actually became Videographers Connect, which is a Facebook group that I run and has almost 10,000 people in it now across the world.
Wow.
So now it's no longer 4 people sitting around a kitchen table, but if I had someone who came to me and they were a client and they said, hey, I am giving a speaking engagement out in Phoenix, Arizona. I don't just have $300 to fly you out there, another 300
Mm,
bucks to put you up in the hotel, $1,000 to pay you for a day of filming, $1,000 to pay for edits. I don't have $3,000 or $4,000 just to pay you to come film my 1 hour talk. What can you do for me? I can go to that Facebook group now, to Videographers Connect, and say, hey,
nice.
I've got this client. They're going to be, in Phoenix, Arizona. We're trying to find a couple people that might be out there and willing to help them. And then we can take their portfolios, pass it back to the client, say, hey, here's our, 2 or 3 people that we can recommend to you. Feel free to check out their portfolio online and see if you'd like to contact them further.
That's really cool. I actually had no idea that you were doing that over on Facebook. Or what's the
Yeah.
easiest way to find it then?
It's just called Videographers Connect. It's
Mhm.
a free group to join. Just make sure that you answer the questions when you join because the auto moderator will decline you if you don't.
Smart.
But that, to answer our original question of how you get clients, that has very quickly become a resource because other people in the group are now seeing me as the expert or even just someone that they can, bring on as a second shooter or as an assistant for live streaming or whatever it is. But that, not only grew my business, but it grew our inner circle. We have a good 7 or 8 people locally that we all work together all the time. And it's really funny because they just opened a studio 2 buildings up from me so I can
Nice.
walk there on a lunch break and say hi. Um, but that really built a community now where we have other people that are referring work. If I'm busy this day, I'll send it to one of the guys and see who's available. And I think that was probably one of the most valuable things that we did. And a quick funny story on that.
Hmm.
We now have really good SEO on a lot of our websites.
Hmm.
So sometimes potential clients will reach out and send the email, and like 3 of us will get it. And we'll call each other and say, hey, did this person reach out to you? Okay, who's going to estimate higher? Who's going to go lower? Let's see who gets the job. And then we'll bring the other person out on the gig with us. And it's really funny when we show up and they're like, wait,
I know you.
I think I contacted you.
Mm.
Like, yeah, we know each other. We work together all the time. So you're getting, if you contacted the 3 best people in the area and you managed to get all 3 for the price of one, you lucked out. But we've just built such an environment where it's benefiting everyone and giving everyone work.
That's great. Yeah, working together instead of working against each other. It always works out for the best. So people can find you on the Facebook group, I'm sure, but where else? Now that we're wrapping things up here, where can people find you and what should they do next to keep up with your videos and stuff?
Yeah, I'm on a small hiatus from Facebook and social media, so I'm not active currently on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, but and that isn't an invitation to go just, join my group and start spamming us with live streams. The auto moderator will delete a lot of those.
Mm.
But I'm mostly active right now between YouTube and LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Those are the 2 places that I'm trying to focus on for 2023 and beyond. So creating more content on YouTube and just posting a little more frequently on LinkedIn. Probably the best way to find me, but feel free if you want to follow Zephan Moses on Instagram. You'll see some of my old photos and behind the scenes from some of the live streams that I've worked on.
Excellent. I will do that as well. And thanks so much for coming on here and chit-chatting with me over the last 30, 40 minutes or so. It's been fun. I enjoyed it.
It's been fun. Yeah, thanks for having me. And we're getting a couple hellos from Zimbabwe and Sri Lanka on my channel.
Oh,
So
wow.
I
Nice.
just want to shout out a few of those people that are watching and Puerto Rico as well.
Nice. Well, hopefully they can catch up on the restream now that we're wrapping things up. But good to have you all here, and thanks so much for joining us. If you want to chat some more, we're going to head over to Zoom now and spend the next about 20 minutes or so on the post show, just chit chatting and talking some more about this fun stuff. As always, let me see if I got all my buttons right here. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all the supreme supporters of the channel. That's Jeremy. We have Revolutionary Lightboards, Marlon, and Cloud Bedrock as well, and all your faces. Thanks for being in the chat. And thanks to my wife as well, who's sitting in the room with me today, helping me out with the live stream, pressing some buttons and helping with the social chat and stuff. All right, I'll see you again next week. Until then, bye-bye.